Hey gang, this week's episode is brought to you by 417 Helmets. It's collectible helmets and more. Mini football helmets from just about every dead and forgotten football league you've ever heard of. Also, mini baseball helmets from the Negro Leagues, as well as custom helmets. You want your business or your organization represented in a cool mini helmet format? Hey, check them out. 417helmets.com. Promo code GOODSEATS for 10% off all of your purchases. And now, here's our show.
4-3 Chihuahuas in Oklahoma City. Matone set, and the pitch. Swung on ground ball to third. This could do it. Noonan has it, throws the ball to first. It's caught! The Chihuahuas have won the championship! El Paso beats Oklahoma City in 4 games. The tying run left at third in the bottom of the 11th inning. The Chihuahuas with black jerseys on, gray pants on, jumping up and down. They're piling on Phil Matone. He's laying down. Now they're standing up, hopping up and down. An aggressive celebration on the grass in between the pitcher's mound and first base. The Chihuahuas score a run in bizarre fashion in the top of the 11th on a bunted ball that flew out of the pitcher's glove when he tried to make a diving play. They take a lead into the bottom of the 11th inning. Oklahoma City hits a double. The runner advances to third and is left at third base. Chihuahuas relievers leaving on the winning run in scoring position in the 9th, 10th, and in the case of the 11th inning, the tying run left on. El Paso relievers in the final 4 innings of this 11-inning game, leaving 6 on base. A suspenseful championship win for the Chihuahuas.
Welcome to Good Seats Still Available, a curious little podcast devoted to exploring what used to be in professional sports. Here's your host, Tim Hanlon.
Good golly, Miss Molly. How are you, everybody? It's your pal, Tim. It's Good Seats Still Available. Thanks for coming on by. As you know by now, it's the little podcast, the crazy and odd little podcast that is devoted to, of course, what used to be in professional sports. Thanks for coming by. And we're back into minor league baseball. It is the endless array of choices that we have from minor league baseball that entrances us. Because, you know, for a show like this that just obsesses about teams and leagues and situations that are either defunct or previously domiciled or just all and out forgotten or vanished, there is no better source, no unending source better than minor league baseball. And nobody understands that better than our guest this week, Tim Hagerty, the longtime voice of the Pacific Coast League, El Paso Chihuahuas. Yes, who I think you can hear on ESPN 600 in El Paso. That was him, Tim, calling the final game of the 2016 Pacific Coast League season when the Chihuahuas won it all, beating the arch rival Oklahoma City Dodgers to win their first Pacific Coast League championship. Tim's been with the team for a bunch of years, I think even dating back to when they were the Tucson Padres. But I digress, because in between those games, and arguably in between seasons, when Tim isn't not only calling the games or acting as the chief media and PR person for the team or doing other various front office duties, because that's what you do when you're in the minors, everybody pitches in to do stuff. He's been writing books about just the crazy sort of wacky little nooks and crannies of minor league baseball. Back in 2012, he wrote Root for the Home Team, minor league baseball's most off-the-wall team names and the stories behind them. If you're interested in various wacky names like the Texarkana Casket Makers or the Wichita Izzies, well, stay tuned, because that's what that book is about. And we're going to get into some of those kinds of crazy stories. And of course, his new book, which we're here to also promote, it's called Tales from the Dugout, 1001, yes, we counted them, humorous, inspirational, and wild anecdotes from minor league baseball, where literally goes page by page into all kinds of crazy, wacky stories of teams and situations in the minors over minor league baseball's rich and colorful history. For example, the Lake Erie Crushers. Do you remember them? They were around in 2011, and they may still be around for all I know. I forget what league they're in. But back in 2012, somebody stole their mascot's head, and they had to that forced the mascot to miss a whole bunch of games. And somehow, after learning through media reports that the police were investigating this theft, the thief apparently returned the head by inconspicuously placing it under the ballpark's tarp when the management wasn't looking, I guess, when the park was locked up or maybe in a rain delay or something like that. That's just the tip of the iceberg of various crazy stories that have transpired that Tim has dug up. We're going to be talking about a bunch of those, but we're also going to get into sort of the life and times of today's minor leagues. And of course, I will ask Tim his opinions on the consolidation of minor league baseball under the umbrella of Major League Baseball, whether that's good or not so good or various things in between that. But this is a fun little conversation that kind of goes back in time and isolates some of the wackier and zanier stories and names from minor league baseball's past, and a bit of what sort of the inside scoop is going on today in today's minor leagues. With our guest this week, Tim Hagerty, the voice of the El Paso Chihuahuas, hard to say if you're not used to it, coming right up in just a few moments' time. And I cannot think of a better sponsor this week to highlight when we talk about minor league baseball and all the pasts and presents of such, then Ebbets Field Flannels, Ebbets.com, EBBETS.com. Ebbets Field Flannels, as you must know by now, is perhaps best known for its painstakingly accurate recreations of flannel jerseys from baseball's past, but also things like team jackets, and not just baseball, but other sports too, caps and the like. And it's the highest quality stuff you're going to find out there. And if you're truly a sports historian and you want to show off to your friends and family the best in baseball or pro football or pro hockey and even other sports garb, the place to go to check out the best of breed is Ebbets Field Flannels. And again, it's Ebbets, EBBETS, 2 B's, 1 T.com. And of course, when you find and fall in love with the various items that you just simply must have there, please use the promo code GoodSeats10 for 10% off all of your purchases. Yes, Good Seats and the number 10 at Ebbets.com. And we thank Ebbets Field Flannels for their sponsorship of the show. And you'll be absolutely glad that you went there for sure. Bookmark it and enjoy all the items. Why don't you? All right, let's get right to our chat that we had about a month ago with, again, the voice of the Chihuahuas. Here he is, Tim Hagerty. Let's get into the various craziness of minor league baseball teams and leagues and names and all that kind of stuff. A fun chat. Please, as always, enjoy. Tell us where you are right now and what were you doing last night? Because you're on the road. Was it a home game? What are you? Who are you broadcasting for these days?
So I'm the broadcaster for the Padres Triple-A team, the El Paso Chihuahuas, and we are in Round Rock, Texas, outside Austin, against the Rangers Triple-A team. And great setup here in Round Rock. Really nice stadium.
And you, so you've been at this for some time. Maybe a little bit of background about your journey into professional sports broadcasting and baseball in particular. You've done a bunch of different sports. I've seen in some interviews, like in Baseball America a couple of years ago. You've mentioned, I think, soccer and I think some ice fishing, maybe even in Vermont or something like that. Tell us the background, the ideation of the career, and the pursuit that got you to El Paso thus far.
Well, it started when I was in high school, Canton, Massachusetts. The high school there has the town cable access TV station in it. And so it allowed kids to do this TV show and broadcast play-by-play. So I was broadcasting games when I was 16 or 17 and knew I wanted to pursue this. I was always passionate about baseball. Growing up near Boston, other kids would follow the Patriots and the Bruins and the Celtics, and I did that too. But I was always 98% baseball. and targeted a college that was specific to broadcasting, Lyndon State up in Vermont. And from there, was able to get my first job with Idaho Falls, the Royals rookie league team, in the Pioneer League in 2004.
All right. So before you go further,
Yeah, sure.
How do you get a gig like that from Vermont and into, I mean, like, what's the process? Like, how do you get the looks, the tapes, all that stuff?
So a big process was the baseball winter meetings, an annual convention that's held in a different city every year. And everybody from the major league GMs to the minor league GMs is there. And it is exciting to walk in and you see Theo Epstein and Brian Cashman. But in my world at that time, the most exciting thing was seeing the Helena Brewers GM. Like, you hear whispers, they have an opening and you're determined to give them your CD. So when I found this link when I was in my college dorm room to the baseball winter meetings, I thought I had this secret. I thought I had the inside. I bought this Baseball America directory and I'm memorizing minor league GMs' names. And then I walk into this massive convention center in New Orleans where the winter meetings were that year. This is December 2003. And I see about 100 guys that look exactly like me holding their Baseball America directories, you know, with their suits on that they just bought the week before. And there were 4 job postings, and I'm looking around saying, this is a lot more competitive than I thought it was going to be. So that was pretty intimidating, but I was lucky to leave there with a job offer to go broadcast for Idaho Falls, the rookie league team, and was off from there.
For the grand sum of
$850 per month. But it actually wasn't terrible because there was this new apartment building a few miles from the stadium, and they were desperate to get people in there. And the rent was $300 a month. So the salary wasn't big, but the truth is I made out better than you might have thought.
And when you walk into something like that, I mean, you're wide-eyed and I'm sure the management isn't necessarily expecting a whole lot from somebody fresh out of college. And you're talking, was this an independent league team? Sorry, I forgot what league this was in.
This was the Kansas City Royals affiliate in the Pioneer League.
Okay. And obviously this is, and we'll get to your opinions about what minor league baseball looks like now in the Major League Baseball overlord and ownership saga later. But what do you expect going in and what's the reality going in?
I have to say, if I had any strength as a college broadcaster, I was pretty obsessed with this. So I think I really did my homework. Like, when I was a senior in college, if you asked me, who's the broadcaster for the AA Huntsville Stars? I pulled that name because I heard your recent audio about the Huntsville Stars.
Thank you. By the way, where can I Venmo you?
But I would have known their name, where they were from, where they worked previously. So I think I knew the broadcaster can expect to do things other than broadcasting. And I think expectations versus reality, it was even more exciting than I would have dreamed. I grew up in the Northeast, went to college in the Northeast, and there I am driving out to Idaho and passing through Wyoming and Montana and just these places that were the Wild West in my head. And I definitely got a reality check fast. You know, weeks after telling college friends I'm going to go be a professional baseball broadcaster, there was this community event that asked for the Chuckers mascot. I think his name was Charlie the Chucker. A chucker, by the way, is a pheasant-like bird. And the hourly person was unavailable to be the mascot. So the general manager said, hey, can you be Charlie the Chucker at this community event at this hospital tomorrow? And I said, sure. So there I was, excited to be a professional baseball broadcaster throwing on a big chicken head. But the truth is that probably helped me, because then in future interviews, you know, you can tell that funny story and other teams say, okay, this guy's willing to help out the team. He's willing to do other things. He doesn't have an ego that will say, no, I'm not going to do something like that.
Well, you said something in an interview. I think this was the Baseball America interview in 2020 where, you know, when everybody was sort of sitting on their hands with this pandemic thing. You kind of mentioned that most people really don't understand kind of what a minor league broadcaster's kind of day is, both at home, which is a little bit more intense, a little bit more full, and on the road. And maybe this was the beginnings of sort of an understanding that I would say it's all hands on deck, but you're chipping in, doing a whole bunch of different things. Do you want to maybe enlighten us as to sort of maybe what your home game day is like? Because I think it's lost on a lot of people that, they think you show up at 4:30 and talk to a couple of people and then boom, go on.
Right. Yeah. So I'm a full-time employee of the El Paso Chihuahuas. So I'm there in the winter as well. And during the winter, I'm involved with corporate sales, meeting with businesses, telling them the opportunities we have to be a sponsor with the team. I'm additionally the media relations manager. So when a local newspaper wants a photo request, or when somebody wants to interview a player, or when San Diego's media wants to interview a player, or overseeing the rosters and the stat packs and the game notes. I also oversee a handful of employees, and this has grown in recent years with Major League Baseball's rules experiments, where there's more and more employees in minor league press boxes. So I oversee the scheduling and the payroll for the official scorer, the pitch clock operator, the automatic ball strike employees, that type of thing. So there's really, I think, two types of minor league broadcasters. Some will work seasonally and focus just on the broadcasting, and then they'll go and call play-by-play of basketball somewhere in the winter, or have some other type of on-air job in the winter. To me, like I said, I've filling in on basketball and ice fishing, as you mentioned, but I remember a couple of years ago filling in on a New Mexico versus New Mexico State college basketball game, and the arena was packed, and one coach had previously coached for the other team, and it was a wild atmosphere, and it was a close game, and it was really fun. But as I was walking to my car on that November night, I began thinking about the San Diego Padres 40-man roster. So if that can illustrate what my thoughts are like, it's I enjoy doing other sports while I'm doing them, but really pretty focused on baseball. So for me, I've actually grown to like the off-air responsibilities. I think that maybe if I look back to my early 20s, I was so focused on broadcast only that maybe it led to some weaknesses somewhere else, whereas the other job responsibilities in the winter kind of make me easier to talk to when it comes to people that know nothing about sports.
Well, I guess my also gives you a sense of sort of where broadcasts and media sort of fit into the grander scheme of things, right? Obviously at a relatively smaller level versus, say, that of Major League or the Division I sports, so to speak, of in pro land. But the reality is it's still a business, right? It's a franchise. There's relations with the parent club. There's talent. There's budgeting. There's raising revenues. There's sponsorship. There's salaries, all that kind of stuff, right? And I'm sure the more involved you are on a full-time basis, the more you're exposed to that. And it's almost like kind of like a mini MBA, if you will, in addition to honing your broadcast skills.
I think that's well said. I remember coming up through the lower levels. I mentioned Idaho Falls. I then went to AA Mobile. Speaking of defunct teams, sadly, that team doesn't exist anymore.
The Mobile
BayBears of the AA Southern League at Hank Aaron Stadium. But as I was working for these places, it made sense that these other things can help me. I mean, think about if you're the general manager of a AAA team and your broadcaster leaves and there's a broadcast position open, and person A has a good demo tape, but in the winter they go and they broadcast basketball in Louisiana. But then person B also has a good demo tape, but hey, he's done some corporate sales. He can write us a press release. He can assist with maintaining the website. He's even dressed up like the mascot before. It's understandable that person B maybe fits a little bit better. So that's why that type of thing early on motivated me, is that it can help your broadcast career.
But I also had to think too, and I didn't make this a career, a conversation, but it's fascinating to me because number one, you still broadcasting is a, how can I best put it, fickle business, right? And perhaps even more so as private equity has squeezed the living daylights out of things like radio and AM and FM stations and that kind of stuff. It's one thing. I mean, it seems like it's been kind of almost assumed, for aspiring young broadcasters, that it's kind of like you got to get any gig you can, and if possible, get multiple gigs, right? Because that's how you essentially sort of pay the bills. And maybe, I think it's rare that you see, the Joe Bucks and the Troy Aikmans of the world getting these multi-million-dollar, Amazon contracts and that kind of stuff, right? Where it's the only gig that they do. I mean, the vast majority, even at the, the top level, you'll hear some of these voices doing, basketball on one network and baseball on another network, or even on a local level, the same thing, right? You'll hear the sports reporter, on a radio station, and then, they may be doing quote unquote moonlighting. I don't even know which is the moonlighting of, some games locally in town. So it does feel to me like it's always, I won't say hand to mouth, but it's always a pursuit and a hustle, so to speak.
Yeah, no doubt. And even looking back to when you were a young aspiring broadcaster, that's what you're doing, is fighting to get games. I'm willing to move to this city to get games. I'm willing to do this and this for a radio station because at night they let me broadcast the games. That's why, to me, I love articles that mention a longtime broadcaster and they called their X thousandth game. So-and-so is called 4,000 games for this team. I mean, to me, that's so admirable because that's what we're all striving to do, is to get on the air and do play-by-play. And a lot of people want to do it. To me, that was kind of the emotional part of the minor league season being wiped out by the pandemic, is we're all fighting to get games. And when you have a 140 game schedule and that gets taken away, it felt like something was taken away from you. It felt like somebody was taking pride, taking money. This is something that was your opportunity and it went away. In the big picture, I was very lucky in the pandemic. I continued to be employed, so I'm not saying that, but I mean, just the aspect of having a game schedule taken away. You're right, what you say, even at the highest level, I suspect even the best of the best feel that way. I remember watching the great Kevin Harlan in an interview. I'm sure a lot of your listeners know him. He does NFL, NBA, college sports on both radio and TV. And just how self-critiquing he is. Even now at this level, he's one of the most famous play-by-play broadcasters in America. And he'll watch an NFL game that he called between the Titans and the Chiefs a few days after it happened. And he's just upset with himself at a mistake that he made that we never even noticed. Not even a mistake, but just the way his voice moved in a certain way, his pitch changes on a certain call. I mean, this guy could roll out of bed and call play-by-play, and yet he's still so devoted to the craft and getting better. And I always think about things like that. In Triple-A, we have 150 games, and I've done more than 2,000 of these games. The truth is, I could probably just show up and mail it in for a game. And for one game, people probably wouldn't notice, but that's unacceptable. These games are opportunities. There's an audience. Even if the audience is smaller than it is in Miami or Pittsburgh or Cincinnati, these are people that are choosing to listen to you. They care about these games. El Paso has a great fan base that people are following this. So I think you have to give it your all, even when you're established.
Yeah. And I personally love talking to broadcasters, especially older ones, because oftentimes you'll see, if you go into their roster, and Kevin Harlan, if you're listening, we definitely want to have you on at some point, maybe after the playoffs. They often do their, shall we say, a lot of penance in teams and leagues that don't exist anymore, right? So Kevin, in particular, was a Kansas City Kings announcer for a bunch of years. This is before, I think they might have been sharing with Omaha at the time as well, before they moved on to Sacramento. John Sterling, the New York Yankees broadcaster, who is, easily into his early 80s now and still going strong. He was like in the WFL and the ABA with the old New Jersey Nets. And, it's fascinating stuff. And it's, again, it's all part of paying your dues. And clearly, even, in your trajectory, right, you paid dues at sort of the lower level of the minors. How do you get to El Paso, which essentially is, the peak, your Triple-A? I mean, I got to think that even you're still looking perhaps for that cup of coffee upstairs and into the majors at some point. I mean, don't tell your current employer, although the secret is out, but who wouldn't, right? How does El Paso present itself? Does it go through the Padres organization? Is it a general manager at the El Paso thing? Like, how does that come about? Like, what was your path to that?
Well, your show is about defunct teams, so you're going to love this story. After Mobile, I got a job as one of two broadcasters at Triple-A Portland in Oregon, 2008 through 2010. And at that time, the Triple-A team in Portland shared its facility with a minor league soccer club, the Portland Timbers. And the Portland Timbers were very popular. Major League Soccer had its eye on Portland as a potential expansion team site. but they said, if we'll give you a Major League Soccer expansion site, the baseball team can't play there anymore because we need to renovate it and make it a soccer football only facility. Well, plans A, B, and C all fell through in Portland for a new AAA stadium. And as late as November of 2010, people still did not know where the Padres AAA team would be in 2011. There was a former AAA park that also housed a Major League spring training in Tucson that was available. And as they sorted out the long-term future of the team, the Tucson Padres were born. And for 3 years, I was the broadcaster for the Tucson Padres at Keno Stadium in Tucson. But that was not guaranteed. As the broadcaster, I'm an employee of the AAA club. The Major League affiliate controls the players, the coaches, the training staff, but all of the business side is handled by the different minor league organization. But I was lucky enough to get that job, go down to Tucson. At that time was engaged, hoping my wife understood that we didn't really know the long-term future of where this team was going to be. And at that point, a local ownership in El Paso, Mountain Star Sports Group, purchased the team, put together a deal for a beautiful downtown stadium in El Paso. And in 2014, the El Paso Chihuahuas were born. But that Tucson to El Paso transition also wasn't guaranteed. New owners, new general manager, new team president. But I was lucky enough to interview and get that job. And yeah, I think that most AAA broadcasters are striving to get better and make contacts and get a major league opportunity, either on a fill-in basis or as their full-time job. But I think that with the popularity of El Paso, I mean, you should see this stadium. It is a palace. And you show up on a Saturday night and there's 8,000 people there. It's just an incredible atmosphere. It's become one of the favorite places to go for visiting teams, for umpires, for scouts. It's really become one of the jewels of minor league baseball that it's made me a little bit more selective, where it would have to be the right major league job, because the AAA job I have right now is pretty special.
Yeah, and it's also puts you in an interesting position because you're essentially, although you're mentioning sort of a previous incarnation, you've essentially been with the team since its very beginning, there as well as its current incarnation and all that stuff. So in some respects, even it's only been, 9 seasons or so, you're almost like an historian, unbeknownst, right? Because you've been there the very earliest days, and every season that you continue to be there and work and as a more general manager-esque beyond just broadcaster, I mean, you become the de facto repository for this team's relatively short, but still pretty special history.
That is definitely part of why it was special. I've even used that unofficial historian phrase because the fans in El Paso will come up to me. I'll be sitting in a restaurant in November and they'll say, "Whatever happened to this player?" And the amazing thing is they're not naming the guys who are Major League All-Stars. They're naming this very random pitcher. And but I love that if I've become sort of the go-to person for El Paso Chihuahuas history. To me, that's one of the special things about broadcasting AAA games is that I'm really the only one that is at every game, home and road. We have media that covers home games, but this series that I'm speaking to you from in Round Rock, I'm the only El Paso on-air / reporter type person covering these games. So that's special when you look back at moments in this team's history and you can say, I was there.
Yeah. And I'm looking right now at a picture of the park. And I think you share it with the USL soccer team, the Locomotive as well, correct?
That's right.
Yeah. And it's a gorgeous park. I mean, it's really cool. I mean, you look at sort of is it still called the doghouse? In right field, that
the brick building, the big dog house.
Yeah, and it's got a little bit of a skyline to it, and it's great. It looks like it's an urban, yet it's fantastic. And how many seats?
Yeah, it has 7,500 fixed seats, but then when you add standing room only and the lawn seating, we've had crowds approaching 10,000.
So as I sort of tipped on the history thing for a second, because obviously I want to sort of drag in your two books, the current one as well as the one that you did about 10 years ago. Don't take this the wrong way, but it does sound to me like these books are almost a reflection of not that you have a lot of time on your hands, so to speak, but you've seen and experienced enough change and movements of teams, your own career as well, It almost feels to me like you kind of paid attention and said, you know what? Maybe collecting some of these and putting these all together in some kind of thematic fashion makes sense. And I specifically call out Root for the Home Team, which is a book that sits prominently, which you cannot see, behind me in my little studio library of books that are worth keeping and referring to on a regular basis. I love the fact that you went out of your way to figure out like all these different sort of teams, the names of them, both present and past. Mostly past, lots of past, and sort of the little histories of kind of maybe how those names came about to the extent. I mean, that's the Lord's work from our little studio's perspective. But I got to think it's also a lot of rabbit holes, and just opens up more Pandora's boxes of stuff as you go deeper into that. What drove you to do that? Was it a rainy day weekend, waiting for the game to start again, or what?
Well, thank you for saving my book and describing where it is. That's a great compliment. The origin of that was the Idaho Falls Chuckers. When I was there, the Chuckers were in their first year as that team name. And so many people would ask me, what is a Chucker? Where does that name come from? So it made me curious about minor league team names and the histories and some of the wildest ones there have ever been. So I looked for a book that described the craziest team names in minor league history. And there really wasn't one. There were encyclopedias that would list teams and their names. But as far as a book that visually maybe showed me a logo or a team picture or an explanation to where it came from, that book didn't really exist. So I began working on it, and it became a side project for 6-7 years. And I thought I really have something here. But I had no idea how this gets from my laptop into a bookstore. Like we've talked about, I was really broadcast only. I had never written a book before. So I actually bought How to Get Your Book Published for Dummies, which was a great book because it described how to write a proposal, how to contact publishers, what type of marketing plan they're looking for, and found Cider Mill Press. They do some great visual books, which is what I hoped. The book you're describing, there's old team pictures, there's current team logos in it. And I think they did a great job with the layout of it.
Yeah, and the thing is, and we'll promote the hell out of it, right, as we promote the show and stuff. But Root for the Home Team, it is visually well laid out, and it's accessible, right? You can literally thumb through it and by a state or a name of a team or something, and it becomes a reference thing. But then it's not always a reference thing. You can just like keep reading and reading and reading and go, that's more incredible than the next one, right? So when you're talking about the Hutchinson, Kansas salt packers, right? Those are it's the vignette, a little bit of the data, right? Which it puts in what league and what years and that kind of stuff, perhaps a little bit more, but then a little vignette, and then maybe a picture that's sort of and arguably all of those, each page or each team could be their own little stories too, right? But that compendium to me, it's like it's indispensable when. When you're going back in time, you're looking at sort of the histories of various teams and stuff, or ones that cul-de-saced into death and lack of remembrance, right? So I think it's really cool. Are there ones that you remember that stand out in your mind, and maybe ones perhaps that eluded you, that maybe you found after the fact, or people came up to you and said, "Hey, why did you miss this one?" That kind of stuff.
Yeah, I love team names that really connect to the city. An old one that I found, the Ilion Typewriters in Ilion, New York. I remember one day finding out that they were named that because the Remington Standard 2 typewriter was invented and produced there. And so many members of the community worked at that factory, so they decided to appeal to them and call the team the Typewriters. I love not only the name, but the story behind it. I think in there I'd do some kind of attempt at a funny pun saying sports writers would love covering the typewriters or something like that. As far as ones that eluded me, the one thing that comes to mind is the Montpelier Goldfish in Vermont. My guess was that it referred to the color of the uniforms. Sometimes sports writers would call a team something in the newspaper, and that unofficial name stuck with the team. The Sioux Falls Canaries were that way. There are no Canaries in South Dakota, but they wore these bright yellow uniforms. The sports writer called them the Canaries, and that's how they got that name, which has continued for decades now. But the Montpelier Goldfish, I never was able to pinpoint 100% why. My theory was the uniform color. There was a newspaper archive reference to some sort of Goldfish and a kid and some sort of story that got some local appeal around that time, but I was never able to confirm that. So if anyone's listening to Tim in Vermont and you know why the early 1900s Montpelier Goldfish got that name, please let them know.
No, we're going to forward that to you ASAP. So putting that sort of in perspective, or any other teams or names that kind of just stick out in your memory just off the top of your head from that pursuit? I mean, you got some real wacky ones there. And I think the ones that are most interesting are the ones that don't make any sense. Like, I mean, the celery pickers from Kalamazoo. I mean, is celery a big deal up in Kalamazoo, Michigan? I don't know.
I think there were farmers up there picking it, I think, if I remember correctly. The book came out in 2012.
Yeah, and I love the fact, like, for example, on that one, you say not to be confused with, the Saskatoon Berrypickers, right? Or the Greensville cotton pickers, right? Or the Porterville orange pickers. Like, oh, of course. Why would I confuse, I didn't mean to confuse it with those.
Yeah, we put that, and then we put a between the lines section underneath each team to mention a notable on-field event or a notable player from those teams. But as far as some others that stand out, I love team names that you can mix in both a baseball phrase, but also a phrase that means something else. The independent Joliet Slammers, like a grand slam, but of course they're famously known for their prison in Joliet. I love the name Slammers. The Hillsboro Hop's a current one, and Oregon, of course, a hop in baseball, but it's also a reference to the beer production there in the Portland, Oregon area. There's another one like that. Oh yeah, Altoona Curve in Pennsylvania, which is named after Horseshoe Curve, the railroad track. But of course, also it makes you think about a curveball. So I think teams have done a really good job. I don't know about you, but when it comes to the latest group of extra wild minor league team names.
My very next question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I like a team name that's like a solid 8 on the wildness meter. El Paso Chihuahuas, I think, fits that. It's notable. Lug Nuts is like that. But there's a couple that have just, to me, flown off the end, like New Orleans Baby Cakes. That was the first name where I thought, okay, are we going a little too far with this?
What about the Rocket City Trash Pandas?
Yeah, great logo. They've had great success. I don't want to knock them, but when I first saw that one, I thought, okay,
no, I get it, and I get it. Look, and let's be honest too, right? A lot of this is all about merchandise and stuff, and alternate, jerseys and stuff. I mean, it seems like every game now is an excuse for a different color scheme and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, some of these do sound like they do arguably try too hard or a bit more, so to say, manufactured.
Yeah, and I remember my reaction to the Trash Pandas when I first saw the name. I wondered if it went too far, but I got to say, when I saw that logo of the little raccoon guy shooting into space, I thought that is a good looking logo. I do like their caps.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Don't you Huntsville, Alabama friends, just to, I get it. It's great. I mean, but it's also, I think, symptomatic though of trying to fuse words together and stuff. And look, originality matters. There's no doubt, because that becomes a trademarkable benefit, and that leads to coin and merchandise and all that kind of stuff. And that's all at a higher level now. Minor leagues, major leagues, you name it. And merchandise is the base of most teams and leagues' existence now. And the more outlandish or memorable they are, the better, probably.
And that is a cool part when you're in an airport and you see a random Lansing Lugnuts cap. Yesterday, I was at a restaurant in Round Rock, and this family had Gwinnett Stripers caps on. Speaking of great names, love that one. Gwinnett Stripers. They have a cool looking fish. That's the Braves Triple-A team in Georgia. So yeah, and that's obviously part of that. They're good looking hats. They're cool logos. They're unique. They're conversation starters.
All right, what's this? 417 helmets. My goodness. Well, you've heard me talk about 417helmets.com, collectible helmets and more on this very show fairly often. Our pal Judd Lesher down in southwest Missouri, I think in the Springfield, Missouri area, if I'm not mistaken. What is it? 417helmets.com. Well, first, if you dig all of our great football stories and episodes of the past, and you'd like to commemorate some of them in mini helmet form, really cool, sort of literal, high quality, professionally, made materials, but in a mini format that you could put on your desk or put on your in your bookshelf or whatever it is, and just about every league that's ever existed, save from the NFL. We're talking XFL, old versions of the WFL. Remember the World Football League? How about various teams, both current and past, in the Canadian Football League? But also NCAA teams of yore and NAIA college football teams of yore. All of them and many, many, many more available for you at 417helmets.com. But that's not it. That's not it, friends. There's plenty more to be had. How about mini baseball helmets? Yeah, a whole bunch in the Negro Leagues. And yes, officially licensed by the Negro League Hall of Fame. You can get a bunch, and they're making more all the time. And by the way, custom helmets can be made too, both of the baseball and the football variety. You got your business, maybe a promotional thing you want to do for your company, perhaps your organization, you want to raise some funds, all that kind of stuff. Great custom approaches to both mini football and mini baseball helmets can be made at your command for you to enjoy and to sell or resell or give away. All of that and more. That's the more part at 417helmets.com. It's collectible helmets and more. And we've got a promo code for you, too, for whatever you purchase. All of them, all of your purchases, 10% off all of those when you use the promo code GOODSEATS. Again, promo code GOODSEATS for 10% off all of your purchases at 417helmets.com. Thanks, Judd, and thank you all for listening and trying them out. And now back to our conversation. So does this sort of tip a little bit of your interest beyond just the day-to-day and the proverbial day and oftentimes night jobs into baseball history? Because the current book, it just came out in March, is similarly situated in terms of its format and all that stuff, but it seems to be a continuation of that, but instead more anecdotal, wildness from the various minor leagues. I got to think that some of these stories in this book come from personal experience as well, or is this fully from the archives, so to speak, as your pursuit of it?
Out of the 1,001 stories in my new book, I'd say about 20 are from games that I witnessed firsthand. A couple of notable ones. In 2007, I was on the air for a bathroom delay. Mobile was at Montgomery, Alabama, and Mobile had this pitcher, Matt Elliott. And in the bottom of the 8th inning, he allowed a game-tying home run. And he got so upset that he went into the dugout, went into the bathroom, and slammed the door so forcefully that it busted the lock. And he literally locked himself in the bathroom. He's the current pitcher in the game. So the 3 outs of the top of the 9th inning are done. Mobile takes the field, everybody except the pitcher. The pitcher's mound is just open. And you could tell something unusual was happening because the manager came out and he's literally scratching his head, talking to the umpire. There's no new pitcher warming up. And that's when I passed this note that says, Matt Elliott locked in the bathroom. And I thought, can I really air this? And they nodded and they said, yeah, it's true. So they had to bring in a new pitcher. This guy, Matt Elliott, was locked in there until 40 minutes after the game ended. The Montgomery Fire Department had to come bust the door down to get him out. So that, of course, is in this book. 2015 is another example of a story in the book that was from a game that I witnessed when we had a wiener dog delay in El Paso. It was a between innings wiener dog race, and 4 of the 5 dogs went where they were supposed to. One of them went rogue and started running all around the infield. And the inning is about to begin, but there's this wiener dog racing all over the field. And it was only recently that I took a look at that video and noticed that one of the Oklahoma City players that he scampers past is Corey Seager, now a star with the Rangers. So Corey Seager has been the MVP of the World Series and also dealt with a wiener dog delay in his career.
But you kind of maybe expect some of this stuff in the minors, no?
Oh, absolutely. To me, that's part of the fun and part of the flavor. I mean, you're pretty unlikely to see a wiener dog delay at Yankee Stadium, right?
Yeah, but things can go wrong. I mean, you've got a number of anecdotes about animals and birds and those kinds of things, either previously invited to the ballpark or maybe uninvited.
Right.
When humans aren't involved, it can get even crazier.
Yeah, and that's what was so fun about researching this book. Back to your question of, what percentage is what I've witnessed versus what I looked up. Um, Flipping through newspaper archives, old Spalding and Reach guides, Baseball Digest archives. I made a research trip to the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. I should note that there's a SABR member, Al Arrighi, who helped me. He lives in Maryland. He's retired. He happens to be my uncle, huge baseball fan, and heard about this project, and he would flip through some baseball books and see what he could find. But yeah, there's certainly been some wildlife delays. In the 1880s, there was a Texas League game that got delayed when a wild bull ran on the field. There was, in the early 1900s, the New Orleans Pelicans, for some reason, had a live monkey as a mascot and ran around the field one day chasing players. There was a monkey delay. This monkey somehow busted free from his cage. There was a game in Midland, Texas in the 1970s that got delayed when there was some sort of chemical on the ground crew's grass procedure, and it brought out thousands of grasshoppers, and they are flying everywhere, and it looks misty because there's so many grasshoppers fluttering through the air. They had to actually shut down the game, and the city of Midland had to fumigate the next day to take care of these grasshoppers everywhere. So there's been a lot of wildlife delay.
But there's just so many things. I got to think that there's even a bunch of them that sort of didn't even make the cut of this book. I mean, like just the fact that, you go back like in 1902, the Texarkana Casket Makers, which, by the way, as a team name, right, should be in some kind of Hall of Fame. But their ballpark straddled both Arkansas and Texas, so that, like you mentioned, that some of the bases were in one state and some of the other parts of the playing field were in another state. I mean, that's just a huge curiosity, and can you imagine, had something gone wrong and legally been challenged for whatever reasons, right? I mean, it could have been
Right.
it could have been a real interstate legal tussle because of that. I mean, it's just that's endlessly fascinating. I could even see that being in a law school exam.
Yeah, I never thought about that. The legal aspect of it. The publisher did some great cartoonish illustrations for a lot of these stories, and I love the one they did for that. It's a guy sliding, and right behind him is a "Welcome to Texas" sign right there on the field. Yeah, I liked that one, the ballpark that was on state lines. There was also one on international lines in Agua Prieta, Mexico, where they used to have some winter ball games and some Mexican League games, and it was right on the edge of the Arizona border. And players actually hit home runs into the United States from Mexico.
That's fascinating. I mean, and again, that too has some legal ramifications to it, especially if somebody's car on the other side got damaged.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm no
Where's the
tort lawyer,
paperwork?
but yeah, right. I mean, these are not so necessarily theoretical sort of issues. So when you do this kind of research and stuff, and I ask this question to people who dig deep and go into archives and all that kind of stuff, how do you prevent yourself from getting stuck in the rabbit hole, right? This is certainly something in the realm of video with YouTube in particular, but in the microfiche, or you're going deep, or do you find yourself going, shall we say, off task a lot? Because I certainly do, and maybe that's just because can't pay attention. But to me, that it's almost like a ball of yarn when you're kind of keep pulling and pulling and pulling, it just keeps going. How do you prevent yourself or corral yourself from doing that, or is that part of the fun and the adventure, and it leads to more stuff that you find?
I think it's the second part. I'm not sure I would want to stop the rabbit hole. What was great about this was that I didn't have a deadline. Like we talked about, I have a full-time job. So most writers, when they put together a book, they'll do the proposal first, then they get that book contract, and then they have a year or two to finish it. That wouldn't have worked for me. My wife and I have a young son. I have a job. I just couldn't have done this to the thoroughness that I wanted to on a deadline. So from 2012 through 2022, I was working on this without a publishing deal because I just had the confidence that someone would do what I wanted to do. And that's what was great about that, was it would allow me to spend one different hour-long session on the web on a Saturday seeking more information on a pitcher being traded for oysters, you can really narrow down, okay, why was this? Who was this guy? Oh, they called him Oyster Joe because he worked in an oyster fishery. Okay, now we're talking. And undoubtedly that happened. And it actually led to some journalistic challenges because they didn't have the internet in the 1940s to fact check things. So in early Baseball Digest magazine archives, for example, they would interview these players, and the player would start telling these stories and say, oh, in 1938, I was in Albany and this crazy thing happened. But now we look him up on Baseball Reference, and he actually was in Albany in 1937. Oh, and the game that he said was at home against Utica was actually in Utica. So then it leads to some challenges. The rabbit hole teaches me even more and more about this story, and maybe some of the details aren't right. So it led me to write around some things where I would just say in the late 1930s instead of assigning a year. That happened a couple of times too on some stories that seemed too hard to believe. You're in Pennsylvania, right? Did you say that?
No, I'm in northern Chicago suburbs.
Okay, sorry, Tim. Anyway,
hey, it's all right. I mean, I'm from New Jersey, so you can't insult me.
The person who first told me about your podcast, John Fredland, he's from Pennsylvania. That's why I was thinking that. Anyway, there was this story in the Pennsylvania State League in the late 1890s where a player broke his bat and there are no bats left in the dugout. So he grabs an axe. Of course, there's an axe in a minor league dugout for some reason. And he reportedly takes that into the batter's box, takes a swing, and hits the ball, and the ball splits in half. And the story says that half of the ball went over the fence, and the umpire called it half of a run. And you're like me, you've seen a million games. This just isn't adding up. I mean, there's multiple aspects of this story that make you wonder. But it appears in multiple sources, and it's so funny, and the half of the run part is interesting. So I didn't know what to do. I spent so much time thinking about this. And finally, I decided I'm just going to write reportedly. And that way you're telling the story of this was a report. This is what they were saying about it. I'm not saying I was there. I'm not saying this guy split a ball in half. There's only a couple of those in the book. I mean, most of the book is confirmed from multiple sources, but there are just a couple that are apocryphal, but they were so funny. And I just felt if I put reportedly, then the reader will know I'm not saying this 100% happened the way it did.
Now, this is fascinating to me. I mean, you look at this book; it's obviously laid out pretty just as well as the previous one. But I mean, the Class D Corsicana oil cities, right, in 1902, right, a Texas League game. There's a law that they can't play games on Sunday in Corsicana, so they move it to a temporary park in nearby Ennis, Texas. The right field fence is like only 210 feet from home plate. Corsicana wins over Texarkana 51-3. I mean, that's to me, that's fascinating, double asterisk type stuff that is just, to me, that's just part of the game and part of the lore. And I love that kind of stuff. Clearly because of the former team known as the Oil Cities, right? But just the fact that those kinds of things happened that you almost expect from from the early years of any kind of pro sport, in particular baseball, which was, the king of sports at that time.
Yeah, no doubt. And to me, that's what is so fun about minor league history is there are so many games. I mean, in the late 1940s, there were 448 minor league teams in the United States, and all of them are playing just about every day throughout the summer. I mean, these days, Triple-A teams play 150 games a year. So if you think about it, if there's one type of sport in the United States that the wildest, or at least most total wild things have happened, it's minor league baseball, just because of the volume of games. So I think what you're saying is exactly right. I love that story about the 51-3 game. The batter, Justin Clark, hit 8 home runs in that game. And he still gets his name in some press these days when the rare thing happens of a minor leaguer hitting 4 home runs in a game. They'll phrase it as it ties the modern era record. And the reason they have to say modern era is because of Clark, because obviously a player in 2023 is not going to hit 8 home runs in a game. Even Shohei Ohtani doesn't get 8 at-bats in a game. So a lot of these crazy stories do still have a relevance today.
Yeah, and that's what I love about sort of this little odd, peculiar genre that we've kind of focused on, because it's I don't want to say it's, well, in some respects it's the gift that keeps on giving, but for two different reasons. One is exactly what you just said, in that the history books, statistics, that kind of stuff, it does harken back when records are close to being broken or actually done, and it becomes sort of a hunt, right, to find out indeed if this was sort of a thing. But it's also, and this is going to lead me to sort of my last series of questions here, is we're now in a boom, I guess, of professional sports. I think now that private equity in particular has discovered professional sports as the new asset class. I'm not sure it's going to all end well, but we arguably are at the boom times, right? Because you've got, lots of, formerly known as secondary sports now getting 3 or 4 leagues. I mean, if you're into pickleball, now is the salad days of that, right? Because you've got 4 professional leagues now, et cetera. Not that these sports don't deserve some professional stuff, but in a world where Major League Soccer now is 30 teams and selling for half $500 million franchises, and I don't know. It feels to me like we're getting pretty bubbly in terms of how much is out there. But in many respects, I don't want to say we're rooting for this, but not all of them are going to wind up succeeding in the long term. And we'll be here, I guess, to clean up the damage and explore those stories as they potentially go away. But the question I guess I really have for you, and I kind of signal it in the beginning, is, well, what is your, having been in the minors now for most of your career, and with the Chihuahuas for almost a decade now, you've kind of been in the previous realm of minor league baseball's architecture and structure, and now now newly crafted Major League Baseball oversight of such. Do you notice what differences do you notice, and is it better or worse, do you think, that Major League Baseball is tightening the screws and harmonizing more than perhaps the more loosely affiliated kind of mindset that existed even just 5 years ago?
Yeah, Major League Baseball took over its control of the minor leagues in 2021. As far as the business side, I really wouldn't know the exact ramifications of what that's been compared to what a minor league general manager would. At the time, what got a lot of attention was the number of affiliated teams going from 160 down to 120. And Idaho Falls was one of those, for example, a team that I used to work for, a city that I care about. So that was an emotional time to wonder about the future of these teams. The good news is Major League Baseball at the time said we are still committed to having professional baseball of some kind in all of these parks. And a couple of years later, that has happened. Idaho Falls still has the full ballpark on summer nights, and they're watching high-level baseball. Now, not every player on there is connected to a major league organization currently. They're what they're calling an MLB partner league, where some players are then have their contracts sold to a major league organization. So there's no doubt it's been a difference. But I've been pleasantly surprised that in these cities, there is still an opportunity for people to go watch live games. And that's a big part of making baseball fans. Even before this transition happened, The Athletic had an article looking at a Major League Baseball study that MLB did with some of its marketing consultants and employees. And they found, basically, they took people that were adults and said, what made you a baseball fan? What they found was that a huge percentage either got it from playing as a kid or attending a live game as a kid. And so to me, think about, I don't know, West Virginia. They had Bluefield and Princeton and Charleston. They had these 3 affiliated minor league professional teams. None of them have an affiliation anymore. And I thought, okay, what about a kid in West Virginia that was going to a game? Are they still going to be able to do that? And a few years later, luckily, the answer is yes. So to me, that's been a pleasant surprise that even though it's a different form of baseball, these ballparks still have action in them.
Yeah, and independent leagues, I guess, can fill in the gap and that kind of stuff. What I fear though is the further corporatization of all of it, right? I mean, again, I single out private equity in particular because the mindset of and private equity does what private equity does, right? It's not necessarily long term. A lot of it is very short termism and economics and reselling the assets and having the valuation grow to the point where it can pay for itself in a shorter period of time versus say other investments, right? And now we see like things like fractional ownerships and ownerships of, and this is not just baseball or minor leagues, but sports generally, multiple sports teams in various leagues and or even in countries, like say in soccer, where it's almost like a portfolio play of investment, which to me is a little bit, is intriguing and maybe inevitable, but it's also a little worrisome because you get out of or away from team ownership and maybe local market understanding and the dynamics and stuff, and it becomes more things like real estate and merchandise and network effects, so to speak, with other teams and sharing resources and that kind of stuff. Again, from a business perspective, totally understandable, but I worry about sort of what the product looks like over time. Maybe it does get enhanced because of all of it, but I do worry that, shall we call them out-of-town owners or partial ownership or sort of more corporate expectations could impede on what arguably is a beautiful game, right? And the minor league should be probably a little bit different than the majors in that it is more accessible, for more fan friendly, more local, more community oriented, that kind of stuff. That's just me maybe yelling at the clouds, but you're in the booth. What do you sort of think or see?
Well, your private equity mention reminded me of this great story. It doesn't totally answer your question, but I think you'll like it. Do you want me to go for it?
Of course.
So in the late 1970s, there was a Double-A team, the Pittsfield Astros in Western Massachusetts. And to show how much minor league baseball and its finances have changed, in the late 1970s, the owner has decided that they want to sell the team. And he's selling it for $5,000 for the whole franchise. And people within baseball are calling him and they're trying to negotiate. And they're saying, I'll give you $3,000. And they're saying things like, well, I know what your electric bills are, and I know you need new uniforms, so I'm not paying you $5,000. So in 1978, this owner in Pittsfield does something very unusual. He takes out an ad in the Wall Street Journal and says, do you want to own a Double-A baseball team in beautiful Western Massachusetts? And he knew that these hedge fund types, that these stockbroker types would love that idea, that they would love to tell their buddies, I own the Astros Double-A team. And he sold the team for $40,000, 8 times what he was initially seeking. And I've heard that mentioned as a story that showed people how much value a minor league baseball team could have, and that there are business people from other cities that see value in it. So the team I work for, the El Paso Chihuahuas, has great local ownership. All owners are so charitable, so known in the community. And I do think going to other ballparks and seeing teams that are owned from people elsewhere, that you do still have that local community, because all of the employees still live there. The general manager is still speaking at the Rotary clubs. The mascot is still going to the schools. So from my perspective, I think that minor league baseball has kept that community spirit.
What do you think happens with the relationship between the major league club and their minor league teams? Has it been strengthened, do you think, or does it portend to be further strengthened in this, more direct ownership by Major League Baseball? Have you noticed any changes, either good or bad, since the announcement and the implementation of that? Is there tighter coordination? Do you find yourself being more harmonized with the organization, or has that really kind of not changed that much?
I think Major League Baseball and its teams have been very pleased because there's now facility upgrade standards. This is something Major League Baseball has announced. It's been in a lot of media reports where they will give a ballpark X number of years to fix your lights or expand your clubhouse. And a lot of ballparks are doing this. So I think Major League teams are thrilled because that's their biggest concern is how are their players developing? El Paso's ballpark is beautiful. The Padres see that, but the things they also see is that El Paso has big indoor batting cages, and they have a weight training facility, and they have a huge training room. All these things that day after day make the players a little bit better. And I think that a lot of facilities are getting that now. Those that maybe were a little bit behind are getting upgrades. There's a bunch of local news articles from various cities around the country of this team is putting in $1 million to their park to do X, Y, and Z. So minor league baseball ballparks already, let's say 5 years ago, were much nicer than they were 30 years ago, but now they're getting even nicer.
Yeah, and the expectations obviously will go up, fan friendliness, and but the other side of that, right, is things like suites and various VIP sort of sections and benefits and bonuses, and sort of the mimicking, if you will, of sort of like the first class versus regular Joe class kind of experiences and stuff. We see it go to any major league ballpark, right? I mean, if you're not sort of in a particular suite or whatever, right, you're sort of among the hoi polloi, and those seats for the hoi polloi aren't necessarily as voluminous as the more attractively financially better paying, situations and suites and all that kind of stuff. Again, I don't know. I'm just, an old guy kind of just getting sort of, worrying about the sort of the changing of times, but you'd hate to see minor league baseball sort of become too much of that sort of divergence of experiences, because I would argue that minor league baseball, probably uniquely amongst professional sports, has always been, at least historically, this environment of family friendliness, affordability, commonality with the players, accessible, right? Where, a lot of these pro teams, an average day at the ballpark is almost out of the reach of an increasing amount of people.
I think that is still the case in minor league baseball. And I'm not just saying that because I work for a team. This season, especially, it feels like we're farther and farther from the pandemic. And I'm seeing full ballparks. I'm seeing the access that you're describing. I think that's unchanged. I think anyone who runs a team realizes the type of thing that you're saying is valuable to get people in the park, to get people following these teams. Another good thing that MLB has done is digital and broadcast wise, every game that used to be only on the web on MILB TV, you can now get on the MLB TV package. People watch El Paso Chihuahuas games on their TV all over the country every night. It is easier to follow a AAA baseball game so many different ways than it was even 5 years ago. So to me, that's a plus.
Oh, that's tremendous to know. And obviously in the revolution of streaming in particular, that's great, because even for broadcasters, right, that's an infinitely better way to get exposed, get a few more looks from others, other jobs, other gigs, and that kind of stuff, and just that kind of national exposure. I mean, there's no, it's just that's probably one of the best sort of things to sort of come out of all this, and arguably there's some more stuff too. I mean, betting and stuff, better or for worse, right? Maybe that generates more interest in all that stuff. So I don't know. We'll see. I hope you're right, that it does retain its uniqueness. I guess that's what I'm most concerned about. I'm not saying this shouldn't evolve. Look, with all due respect, I think a lot of the rules changes that have come into Major League Baseball this year, right? Those don't occur without sort of coordinated use and monitoring in the minors, right? And that's a good thing. I think it's actually been very, very helpful for Major League Baseball. Having gone to a few games this year, I appreciated very much the fact that there's a pitch clock and some of the other dynamics and stuff that make the game a little bit more, modern day paced.
I absolutely agree. If you asked me 10 years ago, do you need a pitch clock? I would have said no. But as the game evolved and there was more and more time in between balls in play, to me, the pace and the rhythm of the game has been normalized, has been brought back. That's why I like words like restored. When people talk about the pitch clock changing the game, to me, and I've been watching as long as I can remember, to me, it's actually brought the game back to normal and hasn't changed the game. The game already was changed with longer at bats and more time between balls in play. So MLB did a good job with the rules experiments in the minor leagues. What they would do is isolate one rule in one league for a year or a half of a year. For example, in Triple-A, we saw the pitch timer, but we never saw the shifts. They were looking at Double-A leagues and studying the shifts because they recognized you can't project on a spreadsheet or in a boardroom what's going to happen with a rule change. You need high-level players to play this out over a season and see what kind of trends develop.
Let me ask you that one last question, and I'll let you. Then I got another question, and I'll let you promote. What was your experience with the pitch clock? How did you approach it, and how did you evolve with it? Because I got to think in the beginning, it had to completely upend your pacing and your storytelling and your notes taking.
It was because of the year before, 2021. El Paso, we're in a hitter's park to begin with, and we're going to these mountainous places like Albuquerque and Salt Lake, and the type of thing that Major League fans are used to with Coors Field. A lot of Pacific Coast League games are like that, long games. These fly balls are soaring out of the park. So in 2021, before they enforced the pitch clock, El Paso had some long, slow-paced games. So I really was on story mode, and how do I make this inning interesting? So then the following year, 2022, when they enforced the pitch clock, it was noticeable. And within a couple of games, you get used to it. But you're making sure you're packing in your stories faster. But to me, it's a vast improvement. So many people will bring up the time of game. And yes, I love the fact that a family is now watching the ninth inning, whereas a couple of years ago, they probably had gone home by then. But to me, the biggest thing is the pace of play. Not just time of game, but pace of play is the biggest benefit, where when you turn on a random Major League game now, it resembles the game I watched growing up in the 90s. There's a natural pace and rhythm to it. And by the way, I still see pitchers going to the rosin bag. I still see a batter stepping out and exhaling. It's not like the pitch clock is 8 seconds. They have 15 and 20 seconds. So I don't know about you.
You didn't feel compromised, though? I mean, it had to really set you off in terms of your historic approach to broadcasting a game. I mean, how long did it take you to kind of normalize that sort of reduced time?
I think a couple of weeks worth of games. But then I thought back, my first season broadcasting professionally was 2004. And this is what the pace looked like back then. And we figured it out then. I think there's still ways to mix in stories. You're just pausing the story for a moment to say, and then Tim Hamlin was also an airline pilot after his career. And here's the 2-1, and then you pause, and then you finish it.
I thought you were going to say hit by a pitch.
Right.
All right. So what other things do you think you may have in you historically to pursue along the lines of these two books? Are there any other stories or thematic encyclopedic topics that you think are worthy of pursuit or that you're itching to do, or are you done in the book publishing field for some time?
Right now, I'm just enjoying talking about this one, going on shows like yours. It's been really fun. I got to go on MLB Network, some other really exciting things of people that I follow or watch or listen to. So my first book came out in 2012. This one came out in 2023. Maybe in another 11 years, I'll have another one, but no immediate plans or ideas at this point.
All right, time to promote. Name the books. How do we get it? And will you do signings? Have you been doing such in your travels as a broadcaster?
A few team stores, including the El Paso Chihuahuas team stores, have had me autograph some books, and they're selling them at ballparks, which is really exciting. As far as the title, the new book is Tales from the Dugout, 1001 Humorous, Inspirational, and Wild Anecdotes from Minor League Baseball. It's available on Amazon. It's available in some bookstores in person, not all. Amazon's the quickest way to get it. And as Tim Hamlin said, it is on his shelf a decade later. So there's an endorsement for my first book. It's Root for the Home Team, Minor League Baseball's most off-the-wall team names and the stories behind them. And that's about the craziest team names in history. And yeah, thanks for the opportunity to talk about it. Both are really visual books, ones that you can pick up. And a cool thing that I'm hearing with my new one is the phrase people of all ages. I'm hearing about people that are giving it to their kids, and they like seeing the illustrations and the crazy baseball stories. So that's a nice compliment.
Okay, our thanks to Tim. Let's see. You can follow Tim, of course, on the air as the voice of the El Paso Chihuahuas. They are the AAA affiliate of the San Diego Padres. He is the play-by-play voice. You can hear him on the El Paso Chihuahuas radio network. You can also follow Tim on Twitter at TD Hagerty. That's T as in Tom, D as in David, Hagerty, Hagerty. You can also follow him on Twitter at Miners Team Names. Miners with an S, Team Names. And all kinds of information about the Chihuahuas can be found on their website, either at epchihuahuas.com or mlib.com/L-Paso. Either way, we'll get you to the Chihuahuas website to find out when they're playing, how to listen to Tim call the action, and perhaps even get some garb or some gear to show your support for the Chihuahuas in their efforts in the Pacific Coast League. While you're online, why don't you go to our website at goodseatsstillavailable.com. Search up this episode number 309 with Tim Hagerty, and you'll find convenient links to the 2 books. We'll take you right to Amazon, and we'll get a couple of shekels of affiliate love, and we appreciate that. And those 2 books are Root for the Home Team, Minor League Baseball's most off-the-wall team names and the stories behind them, from 2012 in paperback from Cedar Mill Press, and Tales from the Dugout, 1001 Humorous, Inspirational, and Wild Anecdotes from Minor League Baseball, also in paperback and also by Cedar Mill Press. Both of those books wherever you can find good books, or again through our website, goodseatsstillavailable.com, episode 309. Click the convenient link, why don't you, and buy them early and often. While you're also online, make sure that you bookmark not only our website, but follow us on the various socials. On Twitter, you'll find us at Good Seats Still. On Instagram, you'll find us at Good Seats Still Available, and on Facebook, you'll find us at Good Seats Still Available. Please send us some email if you'd like. hello@goodseatsstillavailable.com. And of course, our thanks, as always, to the great Jerry Atlanta Braves Payne. Jerry Payne Audio Excellence. Thank you, kind sir. All right, till then, how about till next week? That's what I'm trying to say. Thanks for listening this week. Until next week, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you.